we have, if everything went okay, we have 4 users in the room. So who are our 4 customers? We have John. We have Vangelis. Okay. Kostas. Okay. Excellent. So these are going to be the customers that you will be designing for. So it's very important in everything you do to keep these customers in mind. Again, this does not mean that these will be your only customers or you will only be working for this type of customer, but it helps you in terms of making design decisions. Okay. Maybe in a workshop we cannot simulate everything. And normally before you make personas, you actually do some research. You actually go into the market. You look at what your customers find important. And when you look at these customers, it's very important to understand that these customers have needs, but they also have wants. You understand the difference between a need and a want? Okay? You need water to survive. You want a glass of wine because you like the taste of wine, but you don't need wine to survive. At least, I think most of us. What's also very important, and what we often forget, is that we have fears. And we are much more driven by fear than we like to admit. So, for example, many people are afraid when they have to speak to an audience. So they know everything very well, but when they are in front of an audience, all of a sudden and it's not really rational, because they know, and they probably could explain it very well, but they are anxious in front of an audience. It's the same with your customers. So customers, and we'll come back to this, they have emotions, and it's very important to bear those in mind. So when we talked about the farmer, a perception, a sense of control is an emotion. It's not a rational thing, it's an emotion. It's my feeling that I control things. Often, when I work with clients, they will say, we have a fantastic product because it does this, and it has this, and it has the latest technology, and etc. If it doesn't mean anything for the client, it's lost. I give you an example from, I have a very good friend who has an olive oil, like in Greece, there are many people that produce olive oil, and she is absolutely convinced that she produces the best olive oil in the world, which is fantastic. And so she came to the Belgian market, and I introduced her to some importers and some shops, etc. And the guy said, yes, this is very good olive oil, but we cannot sell it to our customers. She said, why? This is the best olive oil in the world, why can we not sell it to the customers? He said, the problem in Belgium is people don't know the difference between good olive oil and bad olive oil. So if I put a bottle of your olive oil, and it's 3 times as expensive as the next bottle of olive oil, people will not understand why it's 3 times as expensive. They don't know. The feature that it's very good olive oil is not perceived as a benefit by the customer. So, if, for example, you are in Greece and you produce olive oil, the last thing that you should try and do is convince people in Belgium that you have the best olive oil in the world, because you're going to be spending a lot of money, and you're probably not going to be selling a lot of olive oil. What you can do is you can try and differentiate that oil through packaging, through whatever transformation, through whatever you want, so that it all of a sudden it has meaning for the Belgian consumer, or the English consumer, or the American consumer, whatever. So, for example, if you want to sell olive oil in the United States, and you can say it's Robert De Niro's preferred olive oil, then people will buy that olive oil. even if it's terrible. But you have put on the label that it's Robert De Niro's preferred olive oil. Okay? You understand the difference between a feature and a benefit? So benefits is all about feelings. Features is often about tasks. What are people trying to do? So if, for example, the farmer is trying to grow, then that's a task. They want to grow. That's the task they want to perform. And the extent to which you can help them perform that task will determine the value of your service. It is very important to understand your customers, and one of my favorite examples of this, because it's a very clear example, is the tablet industry. The iPad was not the first tablet on the market, not by a long stretch. There were tablets on the market 10 years before the iPad. And the iPad was a big success, and all of the tablets which had gone before were a failure. And it was such a surprising success that on the day it was launched, a very, very smart guy like Bill Gates said, this will be a failure. So why was the iPad a success, and were all of the tablets that had gone before a failure? Many people will say, but Apple is a beautiful product, it's very nicely designed and good packaging, and etc. My hypothesis, purely my hypothesis, is that they had a very interesting insight about the customer. They understood the user, the customer, better than Microsoft and all of the other tablet makers. The other tablet makers had always assumed that what people wanted to do on tablets was produce. Basically do everything they had been doing on a computer before on a tablet. And so they made tablets that could do everything that a computer did, in the way it was done on a computer. Apple said, no. People are going to want to use the iPad not when they are producing, leaning forward, but when they are relaxing. Not when they are producing, but when they are consuming. And so they changed the paradigm. They changed the way of looking at it. They said, we don't want to duplicate what is on the computer screen. We don't want software suites. We want applications. We want people to easily go in and out. It's for very short span of attention rather than intense concentration. And that insight, the fact that they understood this better than others, made the difference between something that worked and something that didn't work. And there are many examples of this. Many, many examples of, if you look at Starbucks, Starbucks was not the first coffee bar in the world. I mean, anybody who will, with a little bit of knowledge will know that this is not the case. And they understood a certain number of things, specifically initially about the American market, because it's very much designed initially for the American market, that other coffee bar owners hadn't understood. And so they were able to design an experience which was different. And so I would strongly encourage you, when you are working with SMEs and when you are helping them innovate, make sure that you try and help them understand their customers better than anybody else. And you can do this in many different ways. There are many, many techniques to do research. The problem I have found is that most of the time people use the wrong technique. So for example, I work a lot for pharmaceutical companies, and every time I talk to people from a pharmaceutical company, they say, let's do a focus group. Let's do a focus group. That's what we always do, is a focus group, it's going to be very good. And then I say, that may be true, but frankly, it's a totally unnatural situation. When was the last time you made a decision about what medicine you would take based on a discussion with 4 total strangers? It doesn't happen that way. You, as an individual, you don't go and sit down in a strange room with 4 people and then decide which medication you're going to take. So you are putting people into an entirely artificial situation, and then you expect them to tell them what's on your mind. Now, in Greece, you know the problems with research techniques, because there are more wrong political polls published in Greece than just about anywhere else in the world. Most of them are totally wrong, and it's often because the techniques which are used are not the right techniques. This is an illustration from a very classical experience. We didn't do it this morning, but we could have done it this morning. So what this is from is they did research with people and they asked them at the beginning of the day, what would be your favorite snack? Would you prefer fruit, healthy, etc.? Or would you prefer candy? And the vast majority of people always say, give me fruit, give me And they say, thank you very much for your participation in the research. Please go back to work. And then, without the participants knowing it, in the office, they put a bowl of fruit and a bowl of candy. The majority of people had said that they prefer fruit. At the end of the day, all of the candy is gone, and the fruit's still there. This is actual research. It's not something. This is actual research which has been done. It's a very good illustration that people sometimes don't do what they say, and more often than not, they don't do what they say. It's not that people lie. People are not lying. They are absolutely convinced when they tell you that they prefer fruit, that they prefer fruit. Because rationally they're saying that's what I should be eating.
Could this be an exception? I usually eat fruit.
Yes.
But it's not time and see candy near it,
Yeah.
so I prefer candy.
Of course.
But I usually eat fruit.
Yes.
I'm telling the truth.
Yes. No, it's the issue is not with people not telling the truth. But for example, one of the things you mentioned is if you have a meeting like this one, you have a workshop, and all that is available, and I think this is a good illustration, there are only cookies, and you're going to be eating cookies, because there's no other option. If I put no cookies, and I only put fruit, you will eat fruit. Okay?
I mean, there is both, but it's this one time that I would prefer
Sure.
cake instead of fruit.
Yeah, but this research was done a couple of times, and so there is clearly a disconnect between what people say and what they do. And one of the reasons is because we basically have, this is not an obscene picture, but we have three different areas that influence our decision. Basically, we have the head, the heart, and then this area. For example, men buy their cars based on this area, not the heart, not the head. It's typical interview. You interview Mercedes owners and you ask them why, or BMW owners, and you ask them why did you buy the BMW? And they start, very good German engineering, very reliable car, high resale value, etc. They don't tell you, even though that's the number one reason I want to impress the women and I want to impress my neighbor and I feel very good about being. That's the reason why they buy the car. All the rest is rationalization, post-rationalization. So what you need to do is you need to go and observe people. What are they actually doing? Not what are they telling you, but what are they doing? For example, this is a picture from a living room in Louisville, Kentucky. I went to see a patient. The doctor had asked me to go and see the patient. The doctor thought that he knew the patient. I came to the patient, it was 11:30 in the morning. She opened in her dressing gown, she apologized. It's a 65-year-old lady in Louisville, Kentucky. She explained to me that she was taking 19 pills every day. She explained to me that the evening before, she had not been able to go to sleep, and so she had smoked marijuana just to calm her down and get to sleep. The doctor did not know anything about this. The doctor who is supposed to treat her knows less about her than me, a silly little Belgian, who goes to her home and who just sits there for half an hour. I just sat there. I just looked around. And I saw the pills. I saw her open at 11:30 in the morning in her dressing gown. And all of a sudden, things became clear. Why is this? Because doctors don't make house calls in the US. They don't go to the patients. And so what does the patient do? The patient, when he goes to the doctor, he dresses up, or she dresses up, and make sure it looks the best possible, and then explains what she thinks she should be explaining. So make the effort of going to where people are and observe what they are doing. It will tell you much more than if you just ask them. Get out of the building. Go and look. We have been to steel mills. We have been. This is an example of a Belgian bus, the main Belgian bus company. We asked they wanted to introduce a digital aid for the bus drivers. When they surveyed the bus drivers, they said the vast majority said that they all use the digital aid. Fantastic, very good. Digital aid, we all use it. We just took the bus. We watched what was happening. Every single driver took out a piece of paper, an old piece of paper, and they had everything on the paper. They didn't use the digital aid. And I can give you example after example after example. This is another example. I used to work a lot in online banking, and I always heard and I always read, even in major surveys, I read that people like online banking because they like the fact that it's convenient. You can do it 24 hours a day, 7 days out of 7. They can do it from their home, etc. All of these factors were coming back. And then we spent a little bit more time with customers. And slowly but surely, not at the beginning, but at the end of the conversation, they said, well, the reason why we really like online banking is because we don't have to go into a bank branch. We don't have to sit across from a bank employee. Because normally when we go into a bank branch, all of a sudden we feel very small. And the branch employee treats us like we are, but when I'm behind my computer, I'm in control. I can control everything. And that's a fantastic feeling. And nobody's going to try and sell me anything. If I want to log out, I log out. If I want to go to another bank and be disloyal, I can do so and nobody's going to look badly at me, etc., etc. So this psychological sense of control was a very important element for these customers, and I have never seen it in any of the surveys we have done before. Think about it. Think about it the next time that you are stopped on the street, or that people call you at home and ask you to participate in a survey. And they will ask you questions like, are you satisfied with our service? What did you like? What did you dislike? And then try and think what they will be able to do with this information. So for example, you have a lot of places now where you can push a button and you can say either a smiley or you're unhappy or you're happy, etc. And then you think about, okay, well, what are they going to do with this? Because they have, I don't know how many people pushing these buttons, but they have no idea why they're pushing the buttons that way. So it would actually be much more useful working with a smaller group and looking at the whys behind what they're saying, rather than absolutely wanting to interview thousands and thousands of people. This is an example from a senior citizens home. They asked for our services initially because they told us the big problem with older people is that they don't communicate as much. There's a deficit of communication. So they don't have people to talk with, etc. So they kind of close up. We said, that's interesting. And so we actually shadowed these older people. And what came out of the research was, it wasn't so much the lack of communication, but what the main problem these older people felt was that they had no purpose in life. They woke up in the morning and it's for a senior citizen, etc. So you're going to come up with solutions that solve the communication issue. What we said is, no, it's a purpose issue. Give these older people a purpose. Explain to them what they can do in terms of volunteer work. Give them a pet, for example, they need to care for. It's been shown scientifically now that if you give them a garden to take care of. That also helps in terms of giving them a sense of purpose. And the interesting thing is, once they have a sense of purpose, then all of a sudden they start to communicate more. So again, it's a very good illustration of that you really have to understand what the problem is. Because if you don't define the problem properly, you will solve the wrong problem, and so you will not come up with the right solution. Now, in terms of best practice, it's very interesting now because you have a very powerful observational tool. And so a lot now when I work with clients, I tell them, before we do a workshop like this, use your smartphone. And so, for example, if you are a farmer and you're going through your daily routine, take a picture of whenever you are satisfied or dissatisfied, or you see something interesting, or you see something that could be relevant or innovative, or whatever it is you're looking at. These tools, these smartphones, are very useful. It's one of the reasons why it's interesting also to analyze social media, because people are kind of taking pictures of things that are important to them. And so if you're working with SMEs, don't hesitate to give them this kind of assignment where you just say, okay, in the course of the week, whenever you come across something which you think is relevant, take a quick picture. This was an example of, we were working for a bank, and the bank was absolutely convinced that their clients wanted to have a very sophisticated digital document management solution. Because they said, everything will be digital now, so we will offer our clients the option of selecting what communication they will get through what channel. And in fact, when we went to these people's homes, when we looked at what they actually did, we noticed that the way they manage their bank business is very unstructured, and they don't want to spend time structuring it. That's not what they want to do. That's not what they're interested in. What's a very good idea is taking pictures. It's always taking pictures. I don't know if you can see this, but we had asked people whether this was for a software solution, an accounting solution, and we asked people, do you like the way the solution is designed? And they said, yes, very good solution, excellent solution. And then we went to the screen, we went to their offices, and we went to the screen, and you had a whole range of Post-its. And on the Post-its, there were all kinds of workarounds to explain what to do when things went wrong in the system. And we said, no, this is not right. This is not right. And so it is very important to observe what people are doing. Okay. So, normally these observations should also help you in terms of idea generation. We haven't done any kind of observation at this stage, so I'm just going to rely on your ready knowledge of your target audience. Don't worry, this is not an exam. We are not going to be handing out grades. It's not a competition, so feel free to just let the ideas flow. What we will do is we will do an exercise called Lotus Blossom. And the idea is to generate a lot of ideas quickly. Afterwards, you can prioritize these ideas, but we will first work on generating the ideas. So, you all have a goal for your service, right? You all know what your service should be doing, okay? You're going to start with, around that central goal, with Post-its, you're going to write 8 key requirements of the solution. So based on your personas, what are the 8 things that you think are important about your solution? So for example, when you talked about the Internet of Things solution, you said that it was easy to use. So easy to use could be one of the requirements. It could be available 24 hours a day, 7 days out of 7. That could be another requirement. Just think about all of the requirements of your solution. Before you start discussing, because the next level gets even more complicated. When you have the requirements, so for example, ease of use, you then try and think with the group of a particularly good example of that requirement. So for example, ease of use, what would be a good example?
Sign up in a couple of minutes. You can sign up.
No, but give me one provider that is a good example of ease of use. Maybe one which is better known than things speak. So for example, Apple could be a good example of ease of use. If you want to have, if you say one of the requirements of your solution is speed, fast, Amazon could be one of your examples. Okay? Don't. You can use Greek examples. Don't look too far. Anything which you think is a good example. So we'll do that first level of the exercise, and then I will explain the next level of the exercise. Okay? So in the center, the goal, the purpose of your solution, then the 8 requirements, and then try and find 8 examples. Like this with many things on the internet today. The pure theoretical knowledge is available for everybody. If tomorrow you want to build an electric engine, you can find on the web everything you need to build that electric engine. But the trick is in the implementation, in the application. Okay? That's why this workshop is very much focused around these exercises, to get you to do things and to learn by doing. Okay? And don't worry if it's not perfect right away. I mean, if it was, again, there would be no reason for me to be here. So it's absolutely normal that you are struggling. That's a good sign. It's a sign that you are learning. If you were able to fill in everything like right away, then probably there was no reason for us to have this workshop. Okay? So, that being said, we will go very quickly to the next exercise, and that's where it really becomes, it all comes together. We're going to be prototyping and making, and this is a very important part of service design. Again, if we meet each other, should we cross each other somewhere in an airport or whatever, 2 weeks from now, if you try and remember that prototyping is really a crucial part of service design. And what makes it different from other approaches. That's why, for me, there's a big difference between consulting and design, because the consultant will leave you with a PowerPoint presentation. The designer should leave you with a prototype, with an actual concept. Okay? Now you have a lot of companies where they discuss, they keep on discussing, and it should be this and it should be that, and then they go through a lot of stages, but it never comes to market. That doesn't help anybody. So you should really focus on getting things out there as quickly as possible. So what is prototyping? Most of you probably know of prototyping because you have seen prototypes of cars, of planes, of boats, etc. But you could also prototype a service. For example, if I wanted to explain to customers a new concept for a bank branch, I could prototype a bank branch right in this room. I have everything here to prototype the branch. Everything. I could draw the screens on paper, I could make this into an office. Everything I need to prototype the service is here. If I want to design a mobile application, all I need is pieces of paper. And those are the different screens of my application. So it's visualizations, and the important thing is that you want to test it with users. You want to test it with customers. I have an opinion. It's one of the things that you should realize. We're all very, very smart people, but nobody has the truth. We all have opinions. We all think that. We all think that this would be a fantastic solution. But the only one who can tell us whether it's a fantastic solution is the customer. If we think it's a fantastic solution, but the customer thinks it's a terrible solution, then it's a terrible solution. You know, I have met a lot of business owners. For example, I know one guy who has a restaurant, and he's absolutely convinced that he has a fantastic restaurant, but his business is lousy. He doesn't have a fantastic restaurant. Unfortunately, the customer decides. You have to start from your objectives. Again, what is your purpose? What are you trying to do? We have generated ideas here, and you probably have a lot of other ideas in your head. And ideally develop them collaboratively. And ideally with users. This is very difficult for most companies. Most companies don't want their clients to come in and help them. So for example, the best way to work on how to sell service design to SMEs is to invite some SMEs and have them participate in the workshop. Why not? Don't ask them, however, that's a big difference. Don't ask your customer what the solution should be. It's not your customer's job to design the solution you have to offer. But they can contribute. They can contribute. But you should not ask them, what is it you want to see? And there are many, many different techniques. We did a previous workshop with Christina where we had Lego and Playmobil and etc. It was a lot of fun. Here we're going to be doing it with storyboards. But there are many, many different techniques. Ideally, in terms of technique, what you want to do is you want to adapt it to the stage of development you're in and to the kind of solution you want to develop. I won't go through these in detail. I don't think it's necessary at this stage. But you have many different types of prototypes. Again, it's anything you can visualize and show to a customer. These are examples of where in a workshop they actually drew this, and when we made a digital prototype it looked like this. But the basic idea is here already. That's the strong idea, not this. This is the strong idea. What's the idea behind prototyping? A lot of people will want to make a fancy prototype as quickly as possible. You should resist that temptation, and you should feel comfortable with making what is called a low fidelity prototype. So something which doesn't look very fancy, very detailed, very developed, but you can make many of them because it's on paper. So if you want to design an application for a smartphone, don't make a digital prototype tomorrow. Start with just some paper screens. And you can test with customers. You can test those paper screens. Customers can react to this. And I have had many, many, many examples of where I've done a workshop or we've spent time together with very, very smart people trying to design a solution. They were absolutely convinced it was the right one. We showed it to the customer, and within 5 minutes, the customer had destroyed the solution. It's very interesting, right? Very interesting to see how wrong you can be. Now, the interesting thing is, when you do validate it with customers, they always give you feedback. And that gives you a direction on where and how you should change things and improve things. And progressively, you can go towards high fidelity prototypes. Now, the reason why these visualizations are important is not just to test with external customers, but also it helps you within an organization to show what it is you actually want to do. So if we were to imagine that ΚΕΠΑ would want to provide a certain service, the more the people trying to develop the service, the more they can visualize the service, the more interesting the discussion inside ΚΕΠΑ will be. Because people will not just be talking kind of hollow slogans or hollow phrases to each other, but they will actually be able to show things. This is a very important concept. It's a very, very important concept, and it's used a lot these days in kind of the leading companies. It's the idea of minimum viable product or minimum viable solution. What's the idea behind it? If somebody tells me, if I see that the need of somebody is to get from point A to point B, so he needs a mobility solution to go from point A to point B, of course, I can try and make a Rolls Royce, and the Rolls Royce, when it's perfect, will get the customer from A to B. But if that customer, in the first phase, is already happy with the skateboard, and the skateboard already improves the customer's life and helps him get from A to B, even if it's not perfect, but it does the essential things, then I have more to gain as a company to launch the skateboard and gradually move up to the Rolls Royce, rather than absolutely wanting to have the Rolls Royce from the start. So for example, in the case we're looking at here, of course you can say, well, we cannot launch a solution before we have this part, and that part, and that part, and this is aligned, and that's perfect, etc. And it's not before everything works together that we will launch something towards the SMEs. That's the way most organizations and companies think. But if you do this, you may have a solution 2-3 years from now. Whereas you are probably able, with 20% of the effort, to get 80% of the solution for the SME. So as you are developing now, this afternoon, your prototype for the SMEs, try to think in that way. What is the key issue we're trying to solve? What is the solution that covers 80% of the needs and that we can get started, get launched quickly? If you have to wait till all the stars are aligned, there's a high likelihood that somebody else will do it, or that you will lose the funding by the time you get around to it, etc., etc., etc. This is a very critical concept, and interestingly enough, it's something that established companies have a very tough time with. There are a lot of, for example, we work for Sony. Sony is a very good example in many of the categories, as they call it, many of the types of products that they worked on. They used to be leaders, they used to be market leaders, and now they are nowhere. And in part it was because they always wanted to be perfect. They had a brand, a premium brand, they wanted to live up to that brand, and so products took eternally to be developed. Whereas other competitors said, no, we will launch a product which is not as good, but it's good enough. It's good enough. Is that concept clear? Maybe an important thing is, maybe an important nuance to this, even if you are designing good enough, it's always nice to have a piece which delights the customer. Again, which not only speaks to the functional need of the customer, but also to the emotional need of the customer. And so, minimum viable product doesn't mean minimum boring product. Huh? It can be an exciting product, but which addresses 80% of the needs. Again, what you're trying to do in terms of prototype is learn. So try and make prototypes that help you learn. Many different types of prototyping. By the way, if you want to do it in your exercise, feel free to be creative in terms of the prototyping you do. We suggest making a storyboard, but open to you to do other things with whatever is in the room. So, the exercise we'll do with you now is, you have the purpose, you have your target user, you have a persona for your target user, you have ideas which you have generated through your Lotus Blossom. Now we will ask you to visualize the customer experience. So go through the customer experience and visualize it. What we suggest is making storyboards. Don't worry about the fact that you can't draw. As I explained to some of you, everybody can draw. It's just that the drawings are not always as pretty as they should be, but that's not a problem. It's not a beauty contest. Draw in such a way that people understand what you're trying to say. So stick figures are good enough. And also decide what you want to know. Now, just to be very clear, the way we are going to do this is you're going to, each group is going to design his or her, its user experience or customer experience, and then we will take a customer from another group, and that person will be the tester, the validator for the solution that you have come up with. So make sure that your prototype is readable, understandable, not just by you, but also by somebody who hasn't participated in your particular design effort. Is that clear? Okay? Now, just a little bit more explanation about customer journey, and then I will let you work. So, how many of you are familiar with customer journeys? Anybody? Nobody? You should.
Yes.
Okay, one person. To start. Okay. It used to be that when we looked at what customers were doing, we thought, well, they just go in a store and they buy and that's it. If you analyze what customers go through vis-a-vis a product or a service, you see that there are many phases. I will leave this up on the screen, so don't worry, you don't have to memorize these phases. But the first one is awareness. The first one is people need to know that your service exists. If you think back to the example I gave on my friend's olive oil, part of the problem she has is that nobody's aware of the fact that her olive oil exists. And if I'm not aware, I will not use it. So if you make the best support tool or support solution for SMEs in the world, but not a single SME knows about it, it's a lost cause. The second one is very important, is trigger. What does it mean? It means that there has to be something in the customer's life that kind of triggers the decision to look for a solution. Let me be quite specific. How many car brands do you know? 20 car brands. Very knowledgeable man, knows a lot about car brands. So he is aware of those car brands, right? But that is information which he is not using, and he will not use, until something happens with, you own a car right now? Okay? You own a car, so until something happens with his car, and he needs to buy a car, all of that awareness is passive awareness. And it's only when there's a trigger of something happening with the car that the customer will say, I will use that information. So in the example we're looking at, what is it in the lives of SMEs that triggers them all of a sudden to say, I'm going to call on help or support or services to develop, to innovate, to whatever. Most of the time now, these days, is whenever we have this kind of trigger. So for example, let's say our car breaks down and we realize that we have to buy a new car. The first thing we'll do now, these days, is search. And search in the broadest sense of the word. So we will search not only on Google, but we will ask our friends, we will ask our family, we will maybe go on social media, I don't know. But we will kind of look at what's out there. What do I need to do? Similarly, these SMEs probably are not going to run straight to you. They're probably going to search somewhere. Then the next step is consideration. So you've just told me that you have 20 brands, 20 car brands that you know. Probably when you are going to look for a new car, you are not going to look at all 20 brands. Because you have probably decided that Bentley, Lamborghini, and Ferrari are just not part of, we know the brands, but we're not going to include them in our list. So part of the challenge that providers have is to appear in this short list. Because even if we know a lot of services, we probably, and that's one of the problems that many companies have, or service providers have, is people have habits, and they keep on doing the same thing. They keep on going to the same provider. So one of the challenges you have is getting into that search. Then there's the purchase, and purchase in the broadest sense of the term. So even if it's free, there is still a moment at which you decide to acquire something. Maybe there's payment, maybe there's installation. A lot of companies now try to avoid installation because it's always a difficult moment, and that's why there's lots of online solutions which don't require any installation. There's use, there's service, and there's relationship. Okay? Now, you don't have to use all of these phases. If you think some of these phases are not relevant to what you're offering, that's fine. If you think there is more than one drawing for every single phase, that's fine as well. But make sure that, again, somebody who has not participated in your design exercise can understand what you're trying to offer. Okay? I have purposefully made some very basic drawings, so that's about the standard that we're looking for. We're not looking for anything more sophisticated than these kind of drawings. So feel free to draw any way you like. Okay? Are you ready for the challenge? Take your time. I'm here to help. Can I ask for one volunteer to join these two lonely gentlemen? Because they have been weakened enormously.